Yeah, whatever time it.
Okay, 5
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. For the next few minutes, myself, my name is Brandon, and my partner, Casey Patterson. We're going to be talking to you a little bit about earmarks in our project, congressional appropriations earmark and representation in American politics. So you've all probably heard a lot about earmarks in the news recently, especially since the 2008 election, the election of President Obama. Earmarks have been forefront in the media. We've heard stories about how they're engorging the budget, corruption among members of Congress, but little is actually put in the direction of what actually an earmark is. You hear this term thrown out, but there's a little background story to it. So we decided to do a little intro as to what exactly is an earmark. And here you can see we have it defined as a congressional expenditure requested by a member of Congress to direct funds at a specific project, usually within their district. So having had all this recent uptake in the amount of earmarks and the visibility of them, you would think that there's something new, that this has just come out in the last 4 or 5 years. When in reality, earmarks have been around almost since the birth of our nation. The first earmark, which was for a lighthouse in Cape Henry on Chesapeake Bay, Virginia, was in August of 1789. It came about when a bill, commonly referred to as the Lighthouses Act, tried to transfer control of coastal lighthouses from the state governments to the federal governments. Now, the southern states, who generally believe in stronger states' rights and less federal power, wanted to fight this and wouldn't approve the bill. Now, the northern states, in a kind of political move to get the southern states to agree, said, hey, we'll throw in a lighthouse on the coast if you agree to sign on to this bill. The bill was passed, and this lighthouse, which is the picture right there, made its way. The first earmark was the third lighthouse in the south. As I touched on before, earmarks are perceived very negatively in the media. They are something of public importance, but also one of great debate. The public view is generally negative. They're presented in media articles and by newscasters and opportunistic politicians as something that is a visible sign of corruption among our government, as a sign of wasteful spending, and as something that is single-handedly contributing to the engorging deficit that we're in. But despite these extremely negative views, little is actually understood about the appropriations process, and a lot of these claims have no backing. We really wanted to explore, and that's what our research is on, is where are these earmarks coming from and why are they being requested? This cartoon here, which shows Democrats and Republicans being equally voracious at the top as they snatch up or fail projects. So I've said that not all earmarks are bad and that they kind of have a bad rap. Well, let's show what exactly we call healthy pork. Earmarks can have practical uses that benefit many people. They aren't necessarily these corrupt forms of spending that benefit just a few individuals. California in general has a shortage of nurses, and CSU Channel Islands decided to combat this problem by starting a nursing program to train prospective nurses that would enter the healthcare field. As they started the program, we didn't have the facilities to house the nurses. So our president, Richard R. Bush, approached Representative Elton Galloway, who's pictured here, who in turn secured an earmark for $146,000 that provided funding for our patient simulation laboratory, which you can see here. Now this laboratory is underway and it's been going for a few years, and we've had 3 successful graduating classes of nurses that have gone back into the community and contributed to healthcare fields.
We began our research with raw data consisting of earmark request letters. Typically, legislators will submit a written request asking for support of proposed projects in their home state or district. This particular letter came from our local representative, Elton Galloway. He requested 6 earmarks, which total $17.6 million. Our earmarks came from the archives of the former chairman of the appropriations subcommittees for the 4 subcommittees and fiscal years listed here. Earmarker is a web-based data entry application that we designed specifically for this project that we've used to enter the raw earmark data. This data is then added to a relational database and then downloaded for us to analyze. Over 17,000 requests have been coded to date.
So this is where our research comes in. We've taken those letters that were obtained by Drs. Christian Kelly from former chairmen of their archives after they left Congress. We've taken those letters, we've coded them, and we want to see, now that these earmarks are being requested, where do they come from? And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at our earmarks respond to district needs, or our earmarks the result of institutional institutional factors within Congress. And I'll explain both of these right now. Institutional factors within Congress. We look at two different things. First is seniority. Does seniority matter when you request an earmark? The political science literature, such as those by Hibbs and Benham, says that as members learn to legislate, per se, as they spend time on the Hill, they are more familiar with the appropriations process, and thus will be more comfortable requesting an earmark. We also look at party. The Republican Party, which has generally emphasized smaller government and less spending, has been especially harsh on their criticism of earmarks, and thus we would believe they request less. But some critics say that Republicans have lost their way, and no longer practice the values that they preach. Not only are we looking at institutional factors, but we're looking at district factors as well. We look at district factors as earmarks are being requested as a response to a certain district need. A member of Congress's ultimate responsibility is to respond to the interest of his or her constituents that put them in office. That's how the legislative branch was set up as the Constitution, and it's the ultimate responsibility for a member to follow that. So these district needs are shaped by the demographic and geophysical makeup of the district. Things like flood risk and military population would drive members to want to respond to these needs by requesting earmarks that will alleviate those needs back in their district.
We believe that this data will show the following three conjectures as a catalyst for earmark request behavior. Hypothesis 1 is based on the idea that members who have served longer in Congress will be more comfortable with the earmarking process and therefore request more earmarks. Hypothesis 2, stemming from the widely accepted view, is consistent with the general opinion that Republicans request fewer earmarks than Democrats. Our third hypothesis states that district need will lead to an increase in earmark requests in the corresponding appropriation subcommittees. This chart illustrates data from the Energy and Water Subcommittee, and it shows support for our third hypothesis that district need is the driving factor between earmark requests. As you can see, district flood risk holds the strongest association to earmark requests, surpassing that of seniority and party. The red bar is indicating Republican earmark requests. In this case, we see a scenario where constituents living in a high flood risk area are approaching their representatives with concerns regarding flooding. The member is responding by requesting an earmark from the Energy and Water Subcommittee for projects such as dams and levees. This will in turn follow their constituents' concerns. This chart showing data from the Military Construction Subcommittee again supports our third hypothesis. In this case, it is clear to see that district military population is the driving force behind earmark requests. Party and seniority are playing a very minimal role. We propose that this is because this subcommittee helps to fund military housing projects for families. A military base in the district has a negative correlation with earmark requests due to the fact that funding for military bases comes from the Armed Services Committee and Department of Defense. The funds would not be appropriated through this subcommittee. This chart represents data from the Interior Subcommittee and shows support for our second hypothesis. Republicans are requesting fewer earmarks. District need is also playing a large role in this case, district land area. We believe that this is so because larger districts tend to have more large-scale natural resource projects, such as national parks. These large projects need the backing of the federal government to be operated and maintained. This chart shows that the earmarks requested in the Labor Age Subcommittee are based on party and seniority rather than on one particular district need. This subcommittee is responsible for a very diverse array of tasks, so there may not be one measure of district needs that encompasses most of the earmark requests. This is also one of the most prestigious subcommittees to be on as a member of Congress. This could also be a factor in why we see party and seniority playing such a large role.
So in conclusion, we've shown that earmarks are an effect of both institutional factors within Congress and district needs that drive request behavior. What we wanted to do and what we've shown in this graph is that, yes, it is both. And in energy and water, military construction, and interior subcommittees, we see district needs playing the largest role, denoted by the large pig. Only in the Labor Age Subcommittee do we see the party and seniority playing the largest role. And as Casey said, this is because that's a more prestigious subcommittee, one that members will go on to increase their own clout and their own power on the Hill. But what it really comes down to at the end of the day is that members are more concerned with promoting the interests of their constituencies than they are trying to increase their own power, and which means that as responsive representation at its finest shows that a lot of good comes from a little piece of pork. Thank you.
Yeah.
Messing me up at the end.